Was it worth the price of taking Oceania, a luxury cruise line, to visit the beautiful historic sites along the Mediterranean in our 10-day cruise from Barcelona to Istanbul? Hi everyone, this is Your World, and welcome to it, where I talk about my visits to some interesting places. I'm Bill Bernstein. I'll talk about what we loved and anything we wondered about on our cruise. In case you get bored listening to me, I guess I'll let you meet this guy. Hi, this is AI Bill. I'm here to make sure you get the details you want, and so that you get a break from that other guy. And I'm just more entertaining and easier to look at. This video is about our cruise departing Barcelona to see Mallorca, Marseilles, Nice and Monaco, Rome, Pompeii, Kavala, and Istanbul. We missed Sicily due to the weather. I'll tell you more about the ship, the Riviera, after I've shown you the interesting places we visited. We arrived in Barcelona, the embarkation port for the cruise, a couple of days early. We always feel comfortable arriving early, both to take in the city we're visiting, as well as to make sure that any travel problems don't interfere with our arrival in time for the sailing. We don't ever want to take the chance of missing the sailing. We had a room at the H10 Catalunya Plaza, overlooking the plaza and about 2 blocks from La Rambla, a well-known tourist spot. If you've heard about the recent protests against tourism in Barcelona, a lot of that happened in La Rambla. If you like this video, please remember that subscribing is free, and the only thing subscribing does is enable you to easily go to this channel to see if there are other videos you'd like. Thanks. Our first day, we walked around La Rambla before meeting our guide, Susie, from Tours by Locals, for our tour of the creations of Gaudi, the famous Catalan architect and designer. The first stop was to Parc Güell, a development designed by Gaudi that was originally for living, but it didn't work out. It's a remarkable thing, though, to visit and to get an idea of Gaudi's vision. The house behind us there was designed by Gaudi. After that, we went to what Gaudi is most famous for, the church, Sagrada Familia. Gaudi began his work on this in 1883, and that work is ongoing. The most recent estimate for completion is 2025. It is the largest unfinished Catholic church in the world and became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1984. The next day we took another Tour by Locals tour, this one of the Gothic Quarter. This was a fascinating look at some of the history of Barcelona and its origins as part of Castile, which merged with Aragon in the 15th century to become Catalonia. This is the hall in which Columbus reported to Ferdinand and Isabella that he had discovered a new world, which was not, in fact, India. The next day we boarded the Oceania ship, the Riviera. The first port was Palma de Mallorca, where we saw a nice flamenco show accompanied by some delightful tapas. Then it was on to Marseilles, the oldest city in France, settled by the Greeks in about 600 BC. After visiting a remarkable cathedral, we saw this impressive building, the Water Palace, which contains 2 museums with a nearby park and was built to celebrate a canal that was constructed to bring water to the city. Then back on board for a great dinner that evening in the Italian restaurant on board, Toscana. The next day was the port of Nice. After getting a nice view of the city and visiting some areas, it was on to Monaco. The idea of visiting Monaco was to see the famous casino, which many of us recognize from the James Bond films. Departing, we had a very nice view of the city of Nice at night. The next day we docked at the port near Rome, Civitavecchia. Instead of doing one of the many tours of Rome that were offered, because we had visited Rome previously, we chose a bus ride to a lake with a lunch overlooking that lake. The lake wasn't much, but the lunch was one of the best meals I had in a long time. Dinner that evening was another really tasty meal, this in Red Ginger, the Asian restaurant on Oceania ships. The port of Sorrento was our stop the next day for our tour of Pompeii. Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, burying the city in ash and pumice. Because the destruction was not instant, the majority of the population actually escaped Pompeii, but some estimates are that about 2,000 remained and were thus buried by the ash. That is the reason that what has been uncovered is so well preserved. One factor in our deciding to take this cruise was our desire to see Pompeii. Being able to take some time to get some beautiful views of Sorrento before returning to the Riviera was another nice feature of our visit to this area. Dinner that evening was a high point of the cruise. This was a private dinner in Privee.
It's Ruel from Philippines also.
It's me.
The dinner was generously arranged by our friend Dean from Australia, whom we met online on Cruise Critic before the cruise, and who had joined us for our tour of the Gothic Quarter in Barcelona. More about the restaurants and other ship stuff after our next stop at Kavala, where we docked and then rode to Philippi. On the ride out, we learned that Philippi was the site of the great final battle after the death of Julius Caesar for control of the Roman Empire. The forces of Brutus and Cassius fought the forces of Mark Antony. Mark Antony's forces won, of course, and the others were killed. In Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, Antony makes a nice speech about Brutus after killing him. This was the noblest Roman of them all. And this is a new friend I made amid the ruins in Philippi. He was just hanging around. Then, back on board. And before we get to Istanbul, I'll show you more about the Riviera. In addition to Privee, the buffet, and the main dining room, called the Grand Dining Room on Oceania, the Riviera has 4 specialty restaurants. Dinner in each of these is part of the overall price of the cruise, one of the advantages of this cruise. I'm a vegetarian, and there's a special staff person assigned to make sure that those with special dining needs are taken care of. For example, we ate in the Italian restaurant Toscana 2 nights, and both nights I requested a certain dish that wasn't on the menu. In addition to that service, Toscana has a bread basket with a nice selection of tasty breads that would have been enough for a meal themselves, and a really appealing selection of olive oils and vinegars are brought to the table. We also ate in Red Ginger, the Asian restaurant, twice. In this restaurant, in addition to preparing the dishes I had requested from the menu, the chef prepared an additional appetizer for me that I was able to eat, and then stuffed myself with more appetizers and a main course. The 2 other specialty restaurants on board are Jacques, the French restaurant for fine dining, and the steakhouse, Polo Grill. Our meals in the Grand Dining Room were also excellent meals. Because we were on the concierge level, we had access to the spa and the thermal pool. Unfortunately, the thermal pool is outside, and the only day when it was convenient for me to use the thermal pool happened to be a really cold day. I went in anyway, but not for long. On the concierge deck, we had free laundry and priority dining reservations in the specialty restaurants, but for us it might not have been worth the extra expense. We never really benefited from the concierge themselves or from the small lounge. We were very happy with our stateroom, which we felt had plenty of space, was well coordinated, and gave us everything we needed. The bathroom was also very up-to-date, with a nice look, plenty of space, and a nice shower stall. I really enjoyed on the Riviera was the trivia competition that happened every afternoon. I can probably best describe the type of trivia there as real trivia, challenging questions that required some true knowledge, as opposed to what I've experienced on some other lines.
Which of the 4 Beatles was barefoot on the cover of Abbey Road?
And our team won enough points for me to get this cap. The final port on this voyage was Istanbul. Even as we sailed in, approaching the city, we were struck by its beauty, and the following day we were on an excursion into the city. We learned a great deal about the history of Istanbul from our guide as we drove toward the landmarks that we would see. We walked toward the Blue Mosque, built in the 17th century, and spent some time inside. It's called the Blue Mosque because of 21,000 blue-green tiles in the interior. Our next stop was to Hagia Sophia, finished in 537, at one time the religious center of the Eastern Orthodox Church for almost 1,000 years. It's been a mosque since 1453 when the Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople. After that we visited the Grand Bazaar, the world's oldest and largest covered market. Then it was back on board for our last meal on the Riviera. The following day we were on our own in Istanbul, staying at a boutique hotel. Although we were fairly close to some of the places we were interested in visiting, the heavy rain deterred us, so we walked around, spending some time in a shop with many varieties of tea and spices.
Smell?
We had a nice lunch at a place with an interesting movie poster and a delightful dinner at this restaurant. We saw a lot on this cruise and really enjoyed each of the well-known and historic sites we visited. The Riviera, which was recently refurbished, was a beautiful ship with some excellent restaurants. If you want to learn more about the specifics of cruising, in addition to my videos, there are many great YouTube channels about cruising you can check out. And here's that AI Bill again. Once he was created, he's just hard to get rid of. That's right, I'm definitely here. If you want to take a look at some other cruises, you can see some of my videos here. Why don't you take a look at our cruise to the fjords of Norway by clicking here. Or if you're fairly new to cruising, there's a lot of info on this video. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Until then, so long from all of us in your world.